Whack-A-Mole, how did everyone, what is everyone's opinion of this challenge?
It was fun to adjust the time setting.
Okay. There you go. Any other comments? Any other feedback?
I think it was hard to like just seeing all the different methods in there, trying to see like how it was actually working was hard to conceptualize at first. But eventually kind of got there the longer we looked at it.
Yep. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So 99% of the time when you are working or go to your first job, you're not going to be building an application from scratch like we have been this whole time. You're going to be working in existing code bases. And majority of your time is going to be trying to understand what the code in that code base actually does. So a lot of the time you're like, hey, I have to implement this small feature. Okay, now I have to understand of how the actual application works. So it's literally just reading code, watching the data flow of the code base, just to understand specifically what is happening when certain actions are fired or pages are rendered. So get used to reading an existing code base. And it does take a lot of time to fully understand, but that's why this challenge is in here. In addition to learning React, is just to fully understand the code base that you're entering into before you go ahead and start coding. Any other questions, comments, feedback? All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to fork it over to my personal GitHub. I'm just going to keep on going through that process. And I'm over here inside of my Mike challenges directory, so I can list everything out. I'm going to clear it. So I've forked it over to my personal GitHub, Tom Preet, Whack-A-Mole. Now I can git clone it down. So I copied that. I can say git clone, and it cloning Whack-A-Mole, list everything out. You can see Whack-A-Mole down here. I can cd into Whack-A-Mole, list everything out, and open this Whack-A-Mole directory into a new VS Code window. And if I look here, we already have a React project that's built out for us. So we have our source, we have our public, and yeah, we pretty much have our React project already here for us. So just like when you were creating in Python, in your Python or Django project, you'd be creating that requirements.txt file, and you do pip install -r requirements. The same thing we essentially have to do when we fork or clone over a React project. So inside this package.json file exists all the libraries that we need. So right here, it's just React and React DOM. So the first thing we need to do is install these React libraries, or all these NPM libraries in our Whack-A-Mole project. And what's the command to install the libraries?
npm install.
Yep, all I have to do is type npm install, and it's going to be installing everything. And it's okay if we get these warnings and everything. We're not getting a bunch of errors.
And that command just traverses the dependencies part of that JSON file? Okay.
Yep. As well as the dev dependencies.
Okay, cool.
All right. So once it's done installing, I'm going to go ahead and open up some files just to see what this looks like.
I do have a question.
Yep.
When we did the React from scratch, we did npm init at first. That's not required here then?
Nope. npm init literally just initialize a new npm package, which essentially just creates this package.json file for us.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So if we already have the package.json file for us, it's already initialized with as an npm package.
Will it ruin anything if you did run that command in there?
I'm not quite sure. If you did, it might override some things, but I don't know. I've never done that before. So if I did do npm, so if I come down here and I do npm init, it says this utility. So yeah, it might do something bad. So yeah, literally just created. I don't even know what any of this stuff is.
I think it just added the description on down into that file.
Yeah. Main repository. Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, I've never done that before. It may have just messed everything up, but I'm not quite sure. We can test that out. So let's just first go ahead and do npm start just to start up the server. All right. So it's starting the development server. And there we go. So let's take a look at what this says. So 2 factors determine what a React component renders. Props, the properties path into the component from its parent, and state, the internal state of the component. If you haven't already, read the docs. All right. In this challenge, we'll be building a whack-a-mole. This exercise will serve as a gentle introduction to state and props. The game engine has already been created. The state of the top-level component, which is app.js, contains 2 items, dens and points. So dens is an array of objects that are representation of the holes in the whack-a-mole game. And points, an integer that contains the number of times a mole is whacked or clicked. So again, inspect the game engine just to see how it is working. So in here we have state. So in state we actually have 2 things of value, which is the dens, which runs this get den state method. So if we look down here and I'm going to make some spaces. So first thing we see is this get den state. So let's go ahead and look at what that does. So it looks like it's also being called here, and it's also being declared right here. So it looks like it returns an array .fill. Don't even know what that method does, and it maps through, and it returns an array of objects where it says is mole visible. It looks like it fills this object with an is mole visible key, and the value is takes in a math.rounds a random value from either 0 or 1. So math.random returns a random value, a float between points, or essentially between 0 and I think 0.99. And then the rounds it up or down. So if the math.random returns like 0.55, math.round rounds it up to 1, and then that value will be false because false is the value at index 1. Else it would be a round down to 0, and true is the value at index 0 of this array. So isMole visible returns a random true or false value, and it fills an array. So it looks like that returns an object of isMole visible of true and false values. So I'm coming down here. I've got this component did mount method. What is component did mount? What kind of method is that?
It's a life cycle method.
Yep, it's one of the built-in lifecycle methods in class-based components. So if you remember the component did mount method, so if I come over here, react.js.org, let's see, lifecycle. See if I can find it. Trying to find where it shows when will life cycle methods render or execute. React. Try. So here we go. So if you look at, so if you look at where the component did mount, when it initially mounts, it executes this component did mount method. So if you come over here, right when the component renders, it executes this component did mount, executes the start game function. So all right, let's go down here. We have the start game function, and it has a set interval that essentially calls this function every 1500 milliseconds. So set interval sets this dot set state, so it updates the state every 1500 milliseconds, and it executes this get then state, which generates a new generates a new array of objects with a new true or false value for is visible. What questions do you have so far?
Could you go back to the pictures of the component? So those things on the bottom in the green, could I think of those like init methods that run at different points in the life cycle?
I wouldn't think, I mean, if that helps you, but I wouldn't think of them as init methods. I would just think of them as just predefined methods that execute at certain times in the component's life cycle. But if you want to think of them,
put whatever you want in there.
Yep, you can. Some of them even take values, like previous states, etc., but not component did mount. But other lifecycle methods take in different values. But we'll get to that in, I think, next week sometime. All right. Any other questions? So I can inspect this. So if I'm come down here, all right, we start the game, etc. Now, if we go into return or in our render, looks like there's a variable called dens, and it maps through each den. So it takes in the den and it returns the mole component. So it returns this component right here. So over here, and then we actually execute the dens map function. So the first thing I'm just going to do is I'm just going to console log this dot state and save it. I just kind of want to see what the state looks like. So look how it's updating every 1.5 seconds essentially. And each time the is mole visible, so we have true, 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 false. And then if I open up this one again, I get true, 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 false, true, false. So it's changing every single time. Cool. And delete that. And then in here, I can also console log, which is going to console log the den right here. So I just want to see, so each den has an object of is mole visible on it as well. So if I come over back to here, it says modify the props that are passed into mole.js and the mole.js component so that the mole image only appears when the is mole visible property of the appropriate den object is set to true. So how do I pass in props to this mole component from the app.js component.
Through the component whenever it gets added to app.js.
Say that one more time.
You add it through the component. So on line 42, where you're adding the mole component, you'd have to add it as a like a key value pair.
Okay, so add like something here to pass it into this component.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So how do we pass in whether or not the mole or the den is visible or not? So if we have den, which is an object, and if I just want to pass in the Boolean value as a prop to the mole component, how can I go ahead and do that?
You could do something like is mole visible is equal to den dot is mole visible.
So is mole visible equals to, and I need to throw this in so I can access the JavaScript, den dot is mole visible. Okay, nothing broke. That's always good when we don't get any errors. So over here, I'm just going to console log, console.log, this dot props, because this dot props, we always have access to the props keyword in a class-based component by doing this dot props. So I'm just going to delete this console log on line 40 and refresh it, and then come over to here. And okay, again, we have is mole visible is being passed in as props, and it's on inside of the mole.js file. So inside the mole.js right here. All right, so now I can actually do is mole visible, which this value, this key, is from this is mole visible that I'm passing into this component. So if I refresh it, there I get true, false, true, false. There we go. Now, how can I make this image display based off of the value of is mole visible? Rod,
Yes.
how can I, based off of the props I'm being passed in, that are being passed into the mole component, how can I render this image, which is dependent on the is mole visible property?
This is something similar to that chalkboard thing.
So right now I'm console logging this dot props dot is mole visible, and that's a true or false value. So how do I do some conditional rendering of this image based off of this true or false value?
Do a ternary operator that if it's true, you can display it. If it's false, you don't, based
Okay.
off the value of that.
Yep. So I can create a ternary operator. So I can say this dot props dot is mole visible. And if that's true, I can render this image. So if I come back here, and there we go, we have our images randomly displaying. All right. So now what I want to do, I'm going to console, or I kind of want to, I don't want to write this dot props is mole visible. I kind of want to do some destructuring. So I'm going to do const is mole visible equals this dot props. And now I can just access is mole visible throughout the rest of my application. So this is called destructuring. I'm literally just extracting the is mole visible value off of this dot props object, so I can use it throughout the return. Again, nothing's broken. Great. Now let's go back. And so now release 1, modify mole.js so that the points are incremented whenever a visible mole is clicked. So in here, this onMole whacked is a function that sets the state of the app component's points. So it increments the points value in the app.js's component. So how do I pass? So this is something that we kind of talked about yesterday with Emma, how we were passing down this function into the mole component. And when I click on on this image, when it's visible, it's going to update the state in the app component. So how can I pass this onMole whacked down into the mole component? Julius. Julius, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep. So how can I pass this onMole whack function to the mole component so I have access to this method, this onMole whack method, inside of the mole component? Lou, you want to help him out?
Yeah, you could send it in as a prop.
So pass this as a prop into the mole component?
Yeah, I think that's how you would do it.
Cool. So what do we want to call this property? What'd you call it, Lou?
I know you could literally call it what the function is called, I
Okay.
guess.
So you called it the same thing as that?
Yeah.
As onMole whack? Okay, that works. We can equal that to, is it like that? Do we just call onMole whacked equals onMole whacked?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, let's check that out. So if I save that, I get an error. It says onMole whacked is not defined in the source. So line 41 space 87. So 41. So right here. So this is undefined.
Do you have to pass it in as an arrow function?
Do I have to pass this in as an arrow function?
Yeah.
Like so? No, that's still not working. So we're still inside of a class. So how do you access, in Python, how would you access instance methods?
In Python, it would be self, wouldn't it?
Correct. So if I'm passing in, now we're in JavaScript, how should I pass this in?
This dot on
This.
So yep, this dot onMole whacked. All right, cool. So no errors, which is always good. So if I come over here, I refresh it. All right, that looks good. So now in my onMole, or my class, or my mole component, I'm just gonna print or console log this.props again, this.props, just to see the props that are being passed in. And it looks like I'm getting the isMole visible and the onMole whacked function that's also being passed in. And you can see that onMole whacked is in fact a function with that F. You could say onMole whacked, kind of see whatever. So in addition to destructuring isMole visible, I can destructure onMole whacked. Cool. So now when I click on an image that exists, how do I execute this onMole whacked function?
Do you use the onClick method for the image tags.
So I can use the onClick. So onClick is an attribute. I think you can put it on pretty much every single tag. And if you click on it, it will execute whatever image or whatever you have in here. So I can onClick, I can console log, you clicked me. And if I refresh it and I click on that, there it says you click me. But now if I try to click on something that doesn't have a picture, it doesn't say you click me. So if I refresh it and I click there, it's not clicking. But once the image shows there, that's great. So in here,
just
yep.
to be clear, you don't have to add a button tag around that thing.
Correct.
Okay.
I think line 7, it should be, you're missing an H in on MOACT.
On MOACT, am I missing it down here? Yes, I am, thank you. All right, so now in here, I can literally just call the on MOACT, and it should execute this method on MOACT, because we're passing on MOACT, that this on MOACT value is equal to this function, and this function updates the state of this component by increasing the points by 1. So they come over here and refresh it. It's not working. And then once I click on something, it says, oh, uncaught type error, cannot read property set state of undefined. So if I look at where it's at, app.js line 32, come over here, line 32 right here. So it's unable to read set state of undefined. So it doesn't know what this dot, it doesn't know what this is. And why is that? We can console log this. So let's console log this and click on it. It says, oh, it's undefined. So this is a regular function. And so in a regular function, this keyword is defined where the function is called. So wherever this function is actually called. So it's called, where is it? It's called when I click on this, like right here. Inside, I'm sorry, the on whack-mole is called in here. However, the this.setState is called wherever the app component is executed at. So wherever the context of the application, that's what this is referencing to, which is usually the global scope. So it doesn't know what this is. Whereas an arrow function, this is one of the benefits of arrow functions that was released in ES6, is that the this keyword is defined wherever the function is defined. So it's defined in here. So the set state is defined right here, or essentially inside the app.js. So this keyword knows that this is associating itself with this class and not the global scope. And there's one way we can do that to fix this. We can bind this keyword to where it's actually being defined in. So we can actually bind this keyword to wherever this is defined in. So now this, so if I refresh that, I come over here. See now when I console log this right here, the this keyword is referencing the app component. So we have access to all of this stuff. But this is the old way, a regular function where the this keyword is defined wherever the function is actually called, which is usually the global scope of the application. So the this keyword is usually undefined. However, with arrow functions, we can actually, that this keyword is automatically bound to where it's defined. So if we do that, we can actually get rid of this bind.this. And if I go back to here, it still works. So when in doubt, always use arrow functions.
I have a question, Tom.
Yep.
So on the component on line, when we pass it on MoWact as a prop, what we did was we put the anonymous function inside there as the prop, and that also worked. Do you know why that is?
So right here on line 9, you said? Wait,
On line 42, yeah, when you pass it as a prop on MoWact equals this, inside of there we did an anonymous function.
you did? So you did like function.
We did parentheses and then equals and then the greater than sign.
So you
And
made it
then-
an arrow function.
Yes.
And then you called on this dot on MoWact,
Yes, yeah,
and that still worked.
that still worked, yeah. So we were getting an infinite loop. So I thought this was the way to fix it. So we ended up doing that, but maybe it fixed it for a different reason that I do not understand.
Yeah, not quite sure. So let's see. You would have to do
I
that.
think we didn't have the square brackets and we had the parentheses after the this dot on MoWact.
Say that one more time. I couldn't.
I think those bracket pairs that you just had highlighted, I don't think we had those, and then I think we had parentheses after the this dot on MoWact.
So get rid of these.
No, the yellow ones.
Oh,
I'll put in the chat, Tom.
all right. I think I know what you're talking about. Oh, what the hell's going on? Oh, my thing's messed up. The chat in the, did you just do like that?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, that's what I figured. Let's see if that works. So that also works. So I've never seen it done like this before. So I'm guessing you're passing in an anonymous function that automatically executes, it returns the execution of this method. So when you click on this, it just executes this method like automatically. Yeah, I've never seen it done like that before. But this is the more appropriate way to do this. All right, what questions do you have about on MoWact and passing in props to a child component that updates the parent component state? No questions? Again, just when in doubt, use arrow functions. So the start game, the componented mount, the lifecycle methods don't utilize arrow functions. So those will always be just regular functions. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and